Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our session on multi-source offshore energy parks, multi-use in the North Sea. My name is Simon Stark. I'm the CTO for the Dutch Marine Energy Center, and I'm very happy to welcome all of you here today. I'm very grateful that you took the time out of your conference to come and join this session. We are facing a very big change in the North Sea. We know until 2030, there's plans to reach up to 20 gigawatts only in the Dutch North Sea for offshore wind. Until 2050, even 70 gigawatts. So these are extremely ambitious targets, which mean that offshore wind will be, in the long run, following these plans, be dominating how the North Sea looks like. However, at the same time, we know that there's other innovations that take place as well. And if we make long-term plans as such, we have to make sure that these new technologies are also considered for these long-term plans. And this is why I'm very happy today to be joined by a great panel of 4 speakers, of Don, Allard, Daniel, and Pim, who are going to talk a little bit about these innovations which are happening right now, these innovations which can take place in offshore wind farms, but also the shifts in paradigm. What are new ideas, new realizations that we see right now happening when it comes to offshore project development, and especially the sustainability of these projects? But let's take a moment first and talk a little bit about what is offshore use, offshore co-use, or multi-use actually, and what are we considering in terms of different technologies, and what is the value and the questions actually that we need to address when doing so. So this is a picture that at least makes me very excited. I think does for most people here the same. But it's basically standing for something where we see not only a vast space, most of which is unused, but also it represents incredibly large investments in infrastructure. And we know that only with a very small portion of this investment, focusing on innovation and new technologies, we can actually now already take the steps to pave the way to a more sustainable energy system in the future. And if we talk about these solutions, how to make the system more sustainable, it's most importantly about aspects such as intermittency of energy production, as well as impact on the ecosystem. And these are not fixed parameters. These are things that we can actually address and change with the right solutions, with the right innovations. And this is where the Dutch Marine Energy Center comes in. We are supporting a whole range of different technologies represented in our 3 pillars. First of all, coming to energy production, we focus on wave energy, tidal energy, floating solar technologies, floating wind innovations, but also a few other technologies in there. But then, for an offshore energy system, you also need to balance. You also need to capture some of the remaining intermittencies, and this is why we also focus on offshore storage. Energy system integration, how can different solutions play together to produce energy reliably? And lastly, everything we do is with the goal of sustainability. So offshore projects need to be designed in a way that they're as sustainable as possible, don't have negative impacts on the ecosystem, or can maybe even help restore the ecosystem there as well. So overall, our role in this sector is to quantify how can we design space more efficiently, how can we do park layouts and park designs combining all of these solutions, how can we overall design an offshore system that is reliable, and how can we quantify this reliability in terms of capacity factors, in terms of curtailments, but also in terms of low production hours and how these can be reduced as much as possible. And lastly, how can we quantify and improve sustainability, finding the hotspots, where is the biggest impact, and where are small changes that can go a long way to make the system overall more sustainable. So this is one of the examples of where we're trying to quantify this. And this is an example where we're modeling actually how an offshore energy park performs if you combine different sources. What you see here on the side is actually the layout of a wind farm. I feel like this is the crowd where we could play the guessing game, which wind farm are we seeing? But I won't tease you. This is to north of the Waddeneilanden, so north of the Wadden Islands. This layout is basically based on a study that has been done on the wind park previously already. But what we have done is we've added 2 more energy sources to this. We've used the same array. We didn't do any changes in terms of the area that is occupied by this farm, but we added floating solar technologies as well as wave energy in the mix to see how the production profile changes. And this is exactly what you see in this graph. And I think this graph shows a lot more than you might think, first of all. But the orange lines are what you should focus on, because this is representing how often does a certain gap occur. And each gap is a moment where we're not producing enough energy, where we're producing less than 20% of the overall installed capacity. And we can see that we can reduce these gaps to much, much shorter time frames by actually combining these different sources. Where before we in some cases have multiple days in there, and the graph actually goes further, we cut it off there, but there's in some cases 5-6 days where there's no production or very low production only. Actually, by combining these sources, we manage to shift everything to the left, the gaps become much smaller, and we have a much more reliable energy system. So this is about the type of quantifications that we do. This is just an example of how we try to quantify how the energy system can look in the future if we actually use all of these innovations. But this is only part of what we're doing. The Dutch Marine Energy Center is a knowledge center, but at the same time we're also an accelerator. We're trying to support these solutions and actually give them a right way to the market. And this is what we're doing in a few of our projects. And I'm very happy today to announce one of our new flagship projects, the Nautical Sunrise project. In that project, we will be working together with RWE and with SolarDuck on the 5-megawatt installation, which they will be realizing as part of the Hollandse Kust West wind park in the Netherlands. And this project will be supporting all the research in terms of reliability, performance, as well as sustainability of the installation to improve floating solar even further and make sure that this is not only an installation, but actually a research program to get as much as possible out of this 5-megawatt installation. On top of that, we also already for a couple of years are coordinating the EU SCORES project, which is doing something very similar, combining different technologies with offshore wind parks. But we're also working together with a whole number of utilities who are interested in this concept. We're helping them to quantify in different locations what does the layout look like, what does the energy system look like, and how can we overall look at sustainability and calculate the important KPIs for that as well. So we're doing so, for example, in Ireland, here in the Netherlands as well, Belgium, Germany, France, Portugal, and Greece. And these are all places where utilities right now are looking at what are the multi-use solutions that we can implement. So overall, I'm very happy to say that there is a very strong growing interest for multi-use, that there is a very clear understanding that we have to be more efficient in the space that we use, and we are trying to help the sector, help the market understand how will this system look like, how can we quantify, and how can we actually provide the right data to make these decisions for the future. So with that being said, I'm very happy to now hand over to some of our panelists for some of their perspectives. And we're starting with Don Hogedorn, who's the CTO of SolarDuck, a developer here from the Netherlands. As I said already, they just participated and won a tender for Hollandse Kust West. So going to be exciting things coming up in the coming years. But I'll leave it to Don to talk more about that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Simon. Very happy to be here today. I want to tell you a bit about SolarDuck. We're developing offshore floating solar. We started in 2020. We're a spin-out from Dame Shipyard. On the background, you see Meganter, our offshore pilot. We already have a pilot here in the Netherlands. This will be our offshore pilot, and this will be launched end of this year on the North Sea. So on the left side, you see how it will look when it's assembled. And here you see a step in the assembly phase, how far we are currently today. Furthermore, I want to announce that we just raised 15 million with leading Dutch investors and Norwegian investors. So a major step. We're fully financed to develop the company in the coming years. As said with Simon already, we just won an EU subsidy of 7 million to also do all the research required to really scale the company much further. And at the same time, we're also already in the process of manufacturing a plant in Tokyo. So all the components are currently ordered, and it will be launched in April next year. A bit on the multi-use, especially in the North Sea case, it's very important. In the Netherlands, we have very limited space. A typical land-based solar project is only 10 megawatt. That's on shore. You have many stakeholders. We have limited space, but we need grid stability. But the entire grid connections are full. So it's very important, if you want to scale as Dutch society, become sustainable, we need to go offshore. There's the space, there we have the square kilometers required. What you see in this picture here is how, an impression how it will look. So what you see here is 120 megawatts of offshore floating solar plants combined. What you already see here is that the wind time is typically 10, 16 megawatts. 16 megawatts is a new wind turbine. Here you see 120 megawatts of solar in the same space. So we have a much higher energy density, so we need much less North Sea to deploy gigawatt scale solutions. We're working together with RWE. They have one Hollandse Kust West 7. And there we need to build 5 megawatts. And it will be delivered in 2026, and it will be grid connected. The nice thing about solar is that it is very scalable, much more scalable than offshore wind. So, of course, it takes a while to get there, but then we can really scale on gigawatt scale. And the ambition is in 2030 to deploy at least 1 gigawatt per year. But of course, that is the North Sea. Why the North Sea? I already explained, but the world is much bigger. So we have a cooperation with TNB in Malaysia, where we'll build a demonstrator of 0.8 megawatt. That's at the Tioman Island, according to Times Magazine, the most beautiful island in the world. So I'm looking forward to go there and to really enjoy the beach there. But we also built this demonstrator. And what you typically see around the equator is that you have much more benign conditions, lower wave height, lower winds, higher irradiation. That's also, of course, very positive for the business case. And then you really should think about locations like islands, but also megacities like Jakarta. They simply don't have space unless you cut down some forest. There's no wind, there's no wave, there's no tidal. So the only way forward is offshore floating solar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Don. I think very good perspective on not only the Dutch market, but also markets abroad. The Netherlands is one of the leaders in floating solar, offshore floating solar right now, which not everyone might be aware of. But that means we've got more than one developer here right now. So I'm very happy to now also introduce Allard van Hoek, who's the CEO of Oceans of Energy, leading the development there in floating solar panels for quite a few years already. So I'm very keen to hear more about you and also about your most recent experiences offshore in the North Sea.
Yes, sure. So we started, the company started in 2016, but in 2019 we started with our offshore deployments. And that was the project North Sea 1, followed by North Sea 2. And those were the first offshore solar systems installed at full sea in high waves. So that was very exciting. And with these two projects, we put offshore solar on the world map. I think that was really important for the industry. This is the first time that offshore solars were really on a farm scale with the purpose of being an offshore solar farm in the high waves. So this is very positive for the industry, and we're also very proud of our team and very grateful to all our partners and everybody who supported it and every institution that gave us all the support. And now we're still on the NS2 project. This has been an enormous learning experience for us. We're still expanding and continuously improving. This is where we learn. It's a very rough location. It's representative for the North Sea, the combination with wind farms. I think what's really different in offshore solar, what's worth to recognize, is that you need to cover a large area. It's small compared to the rest of the sea, but you need a certain area to actually collect the sun radiation. And that gave us a revolutionary design choice from day one. And this is that we used the seawater as part of our structure, let's say. It's like, our system is like a water lily. It floats in the sea, and the water helps it, supports it. So like a water lily. If you lift it out of the water, the leaf of a water lily, it will collapse. But in the water, it stays strong. And this gives us a path to reduction of materials, because that's really important. So then we are at the sea surface, it all works fine, and most of the time the sea looks like this, 99% of the time. But 1% of the time, this is what happens. Real heavy storms, they come along. And we've seen quite a few of this, over 12 storms with 10 meters of waves, 120 kilometers per hour of wind. It's really amazing. And one big storm is enough to take a system out. This is the problem. 99% of the time you might work nicely, but one storm and your system is gone. So an offshore solar farm needs to withstand these storms. And the sea is very unforgiving. Yeah? The sea destroys everything, unless you learn how to withstand it. And over these last years, this is what we learned. We've seen many issues in our system. Year after year, we found new issues that we always managed to improve. So we always managed to remain and bounce back. Every time, a little bit better. And now, after 4 years, we have come to a very solid system. And the other thing to highlight is that the real live data, the real data that we measure here on the sea, this has given us an enormous amount of knowledge and understanding of our system and of the phenomena that occur. And it also allowed us to use this data that we measure to put it into our software, our simulation models. Because when we started, there was no commercial software actually able to predict multiple bodies in high waves. And now we have an in-house software that we have developed using those loads. And that software is able to predict much better the loads than any commercial software. So we validate those results with the real live data. This is our vision for the future. Offshore solar combined with offshore wind. You see some part of the wind farm used for offshore solar. By far not everything. There are still big shipping lanes, also big corridors, sailors that want to pass through. We can leave plenty of room, because if you only fill 20% of the wind farm space, you can already double the amount of energy that this energy farm gives over the year. And if you use almost all of the spaces, still leaving corridors free for shipping, maintenance and so on. But if you use more of the space, you can go up to 5 times more energy per year of the same bit of the sea, the same area of the sea. So we are now building our NS3 project, which is the EU SCORE project that you mentioned on the first slide. And also our Hollandse Kust Noord 1 project. This is a commercial project where Shell and Eneco, together in the Crosswind, they have actually purchased the farm, and we are going to install the first offshore solar within an offshore wind farm here at the North Sea, even an electrolyzer included there. So for us, we believe multi-source energy farms are definitely the way forward. You make much better use of the sea space. But it's also very important to do this in harmony with nature. Now, what does this mean, in harmony with nature? Because everything that mankind does will have an impact. There will be positives and negatives. And it's often really hard to predict which one it will be, especially for something like offshore solar, which is a very passive technology. There's no moving parts, there's no combustion, there's no disposal. It's very passive, it sits there. So what's going to be the impact? And actually, there's no way for people to predict it. And the modeling can never nature doesn't allow itself to be modeled. So the only way to do this is to install different technologies on different scales, 5 megawatt, 15, 50, 100, 500 up to 1,000, and keep on monitoring what's really happening in nature. And some technology may have at the 500 megawatt scale some negative effects, but on the 1,000 megawatt scale, actually the positive effects are much bigger. And this is really the only way to go into the future, to monitor the realities. Now, if you look at the downside, offshore solar will always remain very small. If we look at the 3 gigawatt that's now projected in 2030, which is a high milestone, this is only 0.003% of the Dutch North Sea. And the Dutch North Sea is 1/10 of the total North Sea, so it's 0.003% of the total North Sea area. And even if we grow to a scale where the offshore solar will deliver half of the energy demand of the Netherlands, we're still talking about 3% or 5% of the total North Sea within offshore wind. So we started monitoring from day one. The monitoring in the systems is key for the studies that we do. And as I said, as we're going to monitor the farms when they grow bigger, this is very exciting. And there may be quite interesting upsides. For example, the presence of offshore solar will have a different hydrodynamic effect than the bottom-founded wind. And it can actually neutralize each other. This is something we're studying with Deltares. And another thing is the biodiversity. The floating systems are like artificial reefs, so things will grow there. Well, we can decide from day one to prevent all this growth and have nothing there. But wouldn't it be nice to see what nature itself is going to do when it's going to start growing there like artificial reefs, and where fish can, it can become nursery homes for fish. So imagine our offshore solar and wind farms as protected marine areas where fish can actually nurture, grow up in safety, and then move out to the other regions. So this is very exciting, and I think we have a lot to offer to the world. And in terms of our focus, we are now focusing on the North Sea. This is really our focal area. But as we know, half of the world population lives near the shore, within 100 kilometers. So the whole world is going to be benefiting from what we're doing here. Thanks a lot.
All right. All right. Thank you very much, Alain. Yeah, you can pass it over. You can do one click, and then yes. There we have Daniel. Daniel's the CEO of FLASC. We've heard a lot about energy generation offshore right now, but as I said in the beginning, it's not the entire story. If you want to have a completely reliable and robust system, you need storage as well. So I'm very happy to hear the story of FLASC.
Yes. So first of all, thank you for having us. It's a great platform to be presenting FLASC. So a bit about us, we're a startup originating from Malta. We were spun out and we've been based here in the Netherlands since the past 4 years. And that's really where we started focusing on commercializing our technology. We have a system to store energy offshore within the footprint of a wind farm or a solar farm or a multi-use farm. That's of course the end goal. And it's a system designed for offshore. So we use marinized subcomponents that already exist that can be integrated within the offshore environment, and where there's also a good understanding of how these components interact with nature. So we borrow a lot of knowledge from the oil and gas sector. We did a proof of concept back in Malta. That was the first stepping stone. We validated some of our key assumptions. One of those being is that if we store energy, in our case, we use compressed air, so it's a very safe and sustainable medium, but it heats up, and we actually use the marine environment as a way of stabilizing the temperature. So it's an isothermal process. That's really the holy grail for anyone who's ever worked with compressed air storage. So the marine environment just gives us this effect in a very passive and natural way. So that was a key assumption. We validated this. We actually obtained the first statement of feasibility from the DNV for an offshore energy storage system. This was quite an interesting process as well to rethink some of the land-based assumptions. We have been working in a very collaborative way. This allows us to accelerate as a startup. So we collaborate with Subsea 7, a world-leading EPCI contractor, again, to see what is the established knowledge in the offshore sector and de-risk our technology. We work with Siemens Energy and some other partners, again, to help us get quicker to the market. We're now working on a demonstration project which will be part of a floating wind turbine system, will be installed in Greece. You can see the image in the top in the middle. That's one of our energy conversion systems. That goes topside on a floater. And we've now been awarded an Interreg project called Offshore for Sure, where we'll be doing a digital twin of our system specifically designed for multi-use to test different input sources, so wind, solar, wave, and then combinations thereof, which is very interesting because that can impact the energy storage need for the system. And next year, we'll start our final qualification process that will take us 2 years. And in parallel with that, we want to secure our first wind farm pilot, adopting similar models, so looking at the upcoming tenders and seeing when is it the right time to start pushing for commercial scale offshore energy storage, which I believe to be very soon. On the multi-use topic, I of course could rely on my colleagues to talk a lot about the nature inclusivity, the stability of power supply, so really like the natural aspect, the technical aspect, we can all understand the lights need to stay on, we need stable power, but there's also a commercial aspect, so this has really been our focus as a startup. What is the value of delivering more stable power from offshore renewables? What does it mean, euro per kilowatt hour? So we've done an extensive study as part of our collaboration with Siemens Energy, looking mainly at the UK. UK has a lot of mature wind farms already operating. It has a very challenging process right now with auctioning new projects with the recent CFD results. So in short, developers are asking one question: what more can we do with our offshore consent? So we're given a plot of sea, we can build a wind farm, we can add solar, we can add wave, and then we get more electrons. But can we also get more euros or pounds for each electron? And that's the question we've been trying to answer. And the answer is yes. If you add even a relatively small amount of storage that enables the wind farm to adjust its output by plus or minus 10%, kind of like a large knob you can turn to ramp up the output by discharging your system or ramp down by charging your system, you can participate in different markets. You can participate in balancing markets. You can sell your energy for more because now we have an element of predictability, which means that the business case for the wind farm or for the multi-use farm improves. And fundamentally, it means that more of these will get built because we know that there's a lot of financial pressure on offshore renewables. And this is being seen as a bottleneck. We can look also at the US, what's happening there. So all of the points are, of course, very important. But I just wanted to add this because I knew that, of course, the ecological aspect is going to be very well covered. What we do is also in harmony with nature. We use the marine environment as a natural heat sink. We don't change the temperature of the sea, but rather allow it to stabilize our system. And this just shows like one possible concept for a multi-use park. That's a gigawatt of wind. The dots are the turbines. We can add wave, we can add solar in different ways. And then the energy storage system is just taking the output of 8 of the total turbines and giving us this like plus or minus 10% variability. We'll present a bit more about this study at Wind Europe next year. It's a work in progress. And it's quite interesting because it really allows us to rethink the energy output from a wind farm. But coming back maybe to the Dutch focus, so we've done like an assessment of the North Sea as a market for offshore energy storage. And there's a huge amount of wind farms that will hopefully come online in the next decade. If we assume even a small percentage of these implement offshore energy storage for improving business case or for supporting other things they're doing, it's in itself a huge market. If we just look at the Dutch requirements for offshore space in terms of the energy ambitions, that's a lot of thousands of square kilometers. So yes, we can do a lot with that. And we should also maximize the value of what we get out of it. And we're looking at the next tender rounds. IJmuiden-Ver, I felt, was not very ambitious on the flexibility side. So yes, there's a huge flexibility requirement on IJmuiden-Ver Beta, but it's demand side. And if the objective is to reduce congestion, it's quite logical. If you want to avoid congestion, you attack it where it starts. So if there's a surplus of power because there's a lot of wind, it would be interesting to think about storing it where it's produced and then already delivering a more stable supply to shore. But there are some hints that maybe this will be more ambitious in consecutive rounds. So of course, we are keeping a close eye on that. Eager to collaborate, eager to explore ways of piloting our system. And yeah, if anyone's interested in that or just is curious about how it actually works, we have a stand in the Innovators Dock just around the corner, so you're more than welcome to come by, have a chat. And yeah, and again, thanks for having us, and thank you all for your attention.
All right. Thank you very much, Daniel. Really exciting story. Wind farms becoming market players and not just energy power plants. So, but let's switch perspective a little bit and talk about the paradigm shift that I touched upon earlier already as well, which is the sustainability in the North Sea. So I'm very happy that we have Stichting De Noordzee or the North Sea Foundation here today to talk to us a little bit about the changes that have happened, but maybe also some of the things we can do to counteract these. So yeah. Pim, the floor is yours.
Yes, thanks for having me. So I'm Pim Somers. I'm a project manager at the North Sea Foundation, working on offshore nature-friendly area, nature-friendly energy, I should say. So I've been giving a bit more of an NGO perspective to this story, a bit more of an ecological perspective. So in order to do that, we need to understand the current situation of the North Sea. As we all know, it's very, very busy at the North Sea. You can see all the human activities, even though that is, the North Sea is our biggest nature area in the Netherlands. So all these offshore activities, it's becoming very, very busy, and they all have an effect on the ecosystem. From sand extraction to oil and gas extraction, shipping, fishing, but also renewable energy will have an impact on the ecosystem. But we should not forget that there's also additional pressures from climate change that will keep continuing to happen in the coming decades. So all these human activities and human use in history have resulted in a poor quality of ecology in the North Sea. So we're not only facing a climate crisis, but also a biodiversity crisis. Also, the OSPAR Commission recently published their quality status report in last September, and it again stated that the quality of the North Sea is very poor. So the ecosystem is out of balance, but why should we care? Well, we should care because the ecosystem provides us with all the services that we need. So it's not only helping to counteract climate change through carbon storage, but it also provides us with food through fisheries and other types of services. So if you would imagine the system being this Jenga tower, we have taken out too many pieces, making the system less stable. So when applying new human activities, we should really take care to add blocks back into this system to make it more stable, rather than further destabilizing it. So when looking at multi-use developments, we should have an ecosystem approach. This graph is from the Dutch Wind at Sea Ecological Program, which also looks at offshore wind. We all know that it has direct impacts through, for instance, bird collisions. But there are also a lot of indirect effects on the ecosystem through abiotic changes. So there's more mixing of water layers, there is changing in nutrients, changing in suspended particulate matter. So this changes also, for instance, algal growth, and thereby drives bottom-up changes in the ecosystem. But now we're putting in extra human activities, which will also have impacts on indirect and direct impacts on the ecosystem. And we should really try to understand these effects in order to make sure that the system does not destabilize even further or get further degraded. I'll skip over this for the sake of time. So this is the picture that we are all working towards, and as also demonstrated by the previous speakers, well, it is efficient for space, we can share infrastructure, we can share resources for operation and maintenance, but we should also, in this picture, really include these interaction effects of these human activities. So we know we are looking into effects of offshore wind and also of offshore solar, but we should also really look into this combination, because often these impacts of a combination is much higher than only the sum of the separate impacts. So we should really look into these combinations, and not only with renewable energy, but also with other sectors. Also shipping and fishing will have an impact on the ecosystem that is influenced by renewable energy infrastructure. I'll skip over this for the sake of time as well. So how do we see this, the conditions for multi-use? I think we should really consider the North Sea as the nature area that it is. So really see nature as the basis of the whole system. We should really apply an ecosystem-based approach in not only looking at the direct effects, but also the indirect effects and all the cumulative effects with other sectors that are also taking place in the North Sea area. Because we are working in a degraded system, all the activities that we are putting in are additional in a system, should strive to be nature net gain. So they should add to this Jenga tower to make it more resilient and more stable, rather than further destabilizing it. Otherwise, our services that we get from the sea might collapse. And I'm very happy to hear that there are some multiple monitoring projects already on the way. So monitoring is, I think, key in understanding the effects, because, as Allard already said, it is very hard to model. So these pilot projects should be really closely monitored, and also in the long term. The precautionary principle, well, when applying it large scale, we should really make sure that we understand better the effects before we go large scale. So we should really know what the effects will be, and if these effects are more negative than expected, we should apply adaptive management in order to counteract these negative effects on the ecosystem. And I think a very important point also in paving the way for multi-use is stakeholder engagement in finding an international even vision on multi-use and how we're going to apply it in an ecologically just but also a good way for a stable grid connection. Yeah, so that is the way. So nature is your ally in the energy transition. We should really take ecology into account because the ecological carrying capacity is very limited. So without taking into account ecology, we will not be able to achieve the energy transition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pim. So that's the presentation part of our session, and we're now entering into something hopefully a bit more interactive. We've got roughly 20 minutes time now for a bit of a Q&A to discuss maybe some of the questions that you might have, but also just some general questions about multi-use. So I'll start off with the first one. In the meantime, you can start thinking, and I'll turn over back to you after this one. But yeah, we've heard a lot about the potentials of the combination, where maybe overlaps, but maybe very concretely, and that's to all the panelists. Where do you see the big advantages for you to seek out this synergy with offshore wind, like being next to wind turbines, working together with project developers? Where do you think are your biggest advantages in realizing your technologies through multi-use? You can just go through the row here, starting with Don.
I think it's very important that we start talking about energy farms, not so much anymore about wind farms. I think that needs some bit of mind shift in the government and in all the other stakeholders, because in the end that is where it should go. We have limited space, so how to make use of that efficiency in an efficient way. Then I don't care so much whether it's what the best combination is, but it will, I guess, be a combination of solar, wind, and energy storage to create a stable grid for the future of the Dutch economy.
All right.
Yeah, I fully agree. And the benefit of having both is also that you have more continuous electricity coming from the sea to the shore. At the moment that there is more wind or there is less wind and more sun, which is typically the case, that together you have more continuity and much better use of the infrastructure. And those cables are already paid for now, and they all go all the way to the offshore farms, but they're not used all of the time. So adding solar and adding storage will actually mean much better utilization of the same cable that is already there. And this is also why I agree with the Netherlands and all the countries looking at offshore wind, look at offshore energy. Because right now the connection hubs, the connection points in the wind farms are have only access for wind. If you include in the design something earlier on that allows plugging in more electrons, it's much better to do it in the early stage than to start making modifications offshore. So altogether, especially that power bundling, I think this is really a great area to look for together. Yeah, with wind. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, so from our perspective, there are, of course, infrastructure benefits, EPCI benefits, like from an installation standpoint, you can be installing different systems at the same time, and that creates a benefit. But the co-location aspect, in our case, we can offer the advantage of scheduling the output, making it first more stable, but then also making it better match the demand, because demand is something that also is a variable in itself. The interesting thing we saw, for example, from the UK market is then incentivizing co-location. And under the recent CFD mechanism, despite the challenges on the pricing, there was a very interesting incentive to co-locate storage with generation, where basically if you commit yourself to only charge the system from the co-located energy source, which could be solar, wind, you make that commitment, but then when you charge your system, you're still paid the CFD on the generation. So you're basically paid to charge a co-located storage system. And that, I think that's a step in the right direction to think of multi-use and including that in the tender conditions or in the subsidy conditions. Of course, we need to do more and just really shift the mindset towards offshore renewable energy sites. Yeah.
All right, thanks. Yeah, Pim, from the nature inclusive perspective as well, where do wind parks come in there? What is their significance for you?
Yeah, well, as I already said in my presentation, I think the nature enhancing part is the synergy to look at. But also, I think it would be really good if we, as the Netherlands, have a better vision on where do we want what. Because now with the site passports that we have in the Netherlands, they have a combination of various different sectors being present within the wind farm, and I think that should be based more on the potential for these sectors rather than putting them all in the same wind farm. So there should be a more driven, strategically putting in where do you put energy, where do you put nature enhancement, where do you put aquaculture. So I think we should really holistically approach this, and not only from the energy perspective, but also for other multi-use sectors.
Yeah, very good point. And I can imagine that also data availability plays a very important role for nature inclusive assessments and designs. So I can imagine doing measurements on site and project preparation also is something that you can benefit from.
Yes, definitely. I think these pilots are vital in understanding what to gather this data, and also to better, with future projects, apply mitigation hierarchy, so avoiding effects at the first point, but also minimizing the residual effects that there are, and going a step further in offsetting the nature enhancement in that sense.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
It will be a bit longer future, but if solar really scales up and if energy storage scales up, you need also much less space for the same amount of gigawatt hours. So I think that leaves also space over for other users or for nature itself. And that's of course for the foreseeable future. In the current plans of the government, that's not even considered, that can go in that direction. But I think as industry, if we mature and show that we are bankable and that the technology survives and is fit for purpose, you will see also a mind shift that the farms will be optimized for an energy farm basically, and that should of course include nature as well. But you should look at from the entire energy farm, and then most likely you need much less North Sea to get the same output basically.
Yep.
Yeah, very good point. I want to give the chance also now to you, to the audience, to come with the questions. We've got a first one there, all the way in the back. If you can just very quickly introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, hello, thank you. My name is Bart de Vries, Royal Koning DHV. So as a developer of a wind farm, I have a very limited choice if I want to integrate offshore floating solar in my farm. And Duck Solar and Oceans of Energy are amongst the very few choices that I have actually. So Allard and Don being now in the same panel, I would like to ask you if you can comment on each other's technology a little bit. Yeah, because I think that would be very interesting for the audience. And I hope that you feel comfortable doing that. Maybe you can comment on the benefits of each other's technology.
Good one. Yeah, maybe first of all to add to that very good point. There is quite a few floating solar developers around, though not necessarily all with the same maturity. But I think we'll also from DMEC we'll publish a market report later beginning of next year. So there you'll get a much broader overview also of the other solar developers which are out there, which are quite a few more than these two. But yeah, that gave you 30 seconds to think about your answer. So please.
I don't think we should go this direction. Let's start with that. I appreciate your question. But there are two different technologies. We have now here two technologies on stage. In the future, I guess you will see 40 technologies on stage. All have their own speciality, all have their own benefits. and I'll let it up to your technical team to assess what is the best choice.
That sounds like a very good answer. I have nothing to add to that. But I fully agree there will be many more technologies, and it's just a really exciting roadmap for all of us. And also the market will be really big. If half of the world population is near the coast and is going to use this, it means we're going to be as big as the onshore solar sector is nowadays. So how many providers are there in the onshore solar space? So.
And we heard it for the data inclusive part or the environmental impact part of the installations already as well. Demonstrations are key, getting things in the water, seeing where it goes and really quantifying based on what we see. So I think the same also goes for the feasibility of technologies. We need deployments, we need to see how are they actually performing. And I think then there will be a market to make the decision. Any other questions from the audience? Yes, please.
Thank you for all your presentations. I'm Rebecca from Dame. I actually have 2 questions. The first, one of you mentioned that if you fill a wind park also with the solar panels, you have 5 times more energy. Are you talking about installed capacity or production? Because I think the production of solar panels is a bit lower than wind turbines. And the second question is, because you have less moving parts, does it also mean that you have less maintenance cost over the lifetime of solar panels?
Yeah, so I mentioned that number, and it's actually amazing, and most people don't realize it. They think the solar might add 20, 30%, but we add 400% in total energy output, energy generated per year. So the peak capacity of solar, if you install it, is much higher than 5 times. It's about 15 times or 18 times. Yeah, those are amazing numbers, and most people don't realize it. This is really the benefit that solar will bring to offshore wind. And your other question was, again, maintenance. Yeah, we think maintenance will be much lower than offshore wind. Yeah, no moving parts. This is an offshore engineer's dream. It's just all you need. So we also think there will be different monitoring and maintenance technologies. It can be done much more remotely. Already now, when we go to our farms, we use the drone much more than visual inspection. So we don't need to go there. We go with the drone, and we can have all detailed pictures of everything we need. If you have a 500 by 500 meter or a square kilometer, you're not going to walk there. You use the drone, and you don't even need to go there. You start the drone from the shore. It's really exciting. So maintenance of offshore solar is really going to be, in our view, much, much less than offshore wind. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also in your offshore wind farms, you can make use of the combination. So for offshore wind, the ships will already go there quite often. For floating solar, they need to go less, but it can be the same crew basically, which will perform the maintenance.
Yeah, very good points. Maybe we see there's a lot of interest in the Dutch sector, but also in the room for floating solar. But there's of course also the bigger question of the multi-use design, but also of the market mechanisms that stand behind it. We've already heard you talk a little bit about the CFD there in the UK, which obviously is one of the key market mechanisms there. Maybe based on that experience with the CFD, but also on the way that the Dutch tenders are set up for the offshore storage part. Do you see the Netherlands as much as a key starting market as we see it for floating solar right now, or do you think it's a bit more of an open question where the first steps will be taken?
I certainly think the Netherlands, well, there's a reason we set up the company here. So I certainly think there's a...
Probably.
No, it's not. Looking at the tender requirements for Hollandse Kust North, Hollandse Kust West, those worked very much in our favor. We were able to put pilots into bids. There's the exclusivity challenge. Some of us are aware of this, and then you have to have the winning bid, and that's out of our control as a startup. So the ability to connect with developers, that was great because we were approached very organically. It was a requirement in the tender. And that got us talking, got us learning, and really gearing up and understanding what they need, what makes it interesting from their perspective. IJmuiden has the beta site with quite a large flexibility requirement. This is just, of course, my personal opinion. My disappointment there is that the narrative is very clear on avoiding congestion, yet there's no incentive to actually co-locate storage with generation. I understand that as much as, we talked about having 2 floating solar developers that are, let's say, offshore energy storage is possibly even a bit behind that. in the development cycle. So I understand it's going to take more time to start putting maybe more ambitious tender requirements. My concern sometimes is that the hydrogen narrative dilutes a bit the flexibility narrative, because hydrogen is, of course, an excellent energy carrier, but may not be as good for the intraday variability. Hydrogen production based on when there's some surplus power or when there's some cheap energy, I think will struggle to be feasible from an economic standpoint. So actually, we get a lot of questions for, can you deliver a system that can stabilize power for hydrogen production? So in that sense, then it's also a very strong signal. Of course, the Netherlands has huge hydrogen production ambitions. So I think it's the right place. I think it's possibly where we will have our first commercial project, given the trend of how things are going. But I would like to see more in the next rounds, more ambitions towards addressing a very serious grid and congestion issue, which is already quite real, and starting to really put the actual scoring criteria in line with the general technical ambitions.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I think with the Dutch feed-in subsidy running out and new plans being made, this is a very good moment also to have a look at what can be done to support storage as well. Are there any more questions from the audience? Yes, we've got one in the back.
Thank you. Peter Brunn from DNV. You showed some, I think it was Alex showing some very interesting pictures on storms in the North Sea. It's a very rough environment out there, and we also know that we need, from the technology side, to deal with extreme weather conditions or even 100 years or 50 years events. So can you speak a little more about how you have mitigated these extreme conditions for your technology solutions? Thank you.
Maybe to add to that as well, and I think this is one to answer for more of you, not only the extreme conditions, but maybe also because I think all of you already went through some first steps of certification processes as well. What the relevance of the certification, the third-party review there for you is as well.
Right. Yeah. So how to mitigate it? Well, you need to survive it. You cannot go away. You cannot tow it in or so. So every ship, every drilling rig, well, drilling is the main, but every ship that we build, it comes back into harbor. But those systems that we build, they need to stay there for 25 years uninterrupted. And it's a whole different design philosophy. If you work towards this, everything changes. And this knowledge is present in the Netherlands, but it's a very small sector in the Netherlands that actually is used to build something and keep it out there. It's almost as if you have something on the moon. You need to think about everything before you build it. So it's an art, I would say. It's more an art than a science. And as I said, it's new to cover a large area. So for us, the only way to find out was actually, to do the model testing, first computer design, do a lot of model testing, where we found at some point we reached a system that remained stable, even if it was damaged. And that's actually really nice, because the damage that we saw in the model testing, we later saw similar damage, but it always remained intact as a whole. And we could just exchange those parts that failed and design them better and fabricate them better. And yeah, we learned over time what really is needed to keep the systems there. And model testing is key in offshore technology, where I'm raised in. But in the end, the model testing doesn't give you the detailed, the location of the welds, the detailed, the molecules, because you cannot scale down everything. You have a rough platform scale down. So this is again where the actual sea experience came in. And the first storm, I remember it very well. We were really anxious, and we didn't have as much monitoring yet. It was in the early stages, and we needed to go there by boat after the storm to see what it looked like. Yeah, this is really, really exciting. We had GPS control, so we knew it was still there. But indeed, it survived, and as of then, all the storms are still something that we are aware of. We have additional monitoring. But I think I would say we're 95% down to 25 years of guaranteed lifetime. And certification and verification, that's actually followed in this case. So that's different. So normally you have all the rules set out and you know what to design to, but this didn't exist. So yeah, we work together with various third-party verification certifications with Bureau Veritas and DMV. And from both, we have now gone through all the scrutinizing of the design, approval in principle from one, and statement of conformity of the other. So that's very good, and also gives a lot of confidence. And also the process was really beneficial for our team. But in this case, it followed the reality, because this is how something as new as offshore solar just needed to start. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to comment on that as well? I know you also already had some certification steps you've taken.
Yeah. So certification is very important from a bankability perspective for the project's reliability. It's key offshore. So that's also where we started really early on with it with Bureau Veritas to certify the design. What's new? Like a ship, we know already for multiple years. I come from Dame shipyards. Worked there at the R&D department, so you know quite well how to design a ship and that it will last 30 years. Offshore floating wind is already a bit more complicated, because there you have a wind turbine and you have the sea is moving around. But then when you go to offshore floating solar, it becomes much more complex, because you have multiple bodies which are connected together, also with non-linearities in between. You're on the boundary of the sea, so between the air and the water. So that's quite different than floating wind, for instance. So for that you need your set out the right steps, testings in the tank, making the simulations, doing material tests in the lab, and based on that you build on your TRL levels, technical readiness levels, till you achieve TRL 9. So with Maganzer we will achieve TRL level 7, which is meaning offshore testing in a real environment, with also certification on that. By doing all those calculations, you advance in your design.
Yeah. No, very good point indeed. And that's maybe a good moment. Appreciating that we are the only thing probably standing between you and lunch right now, to start wrapping this up, and I would like to maybe give each of you the opportunity to very quickly comment on two questions. First of all, given that we did a good job and are re-invited and sit here again next year, what is maybe something that you hope to be able to show or talk about then? But also, what is your longer-term perspective? What do you think the North Sea and its energy farms, but also other seas, will look like in 10, 15 years if we look forward to 2035? We can start with you, Pim.
Yeah, for the North Sea, next year I hope that there's more attention for these cumulative effects, but also maybe a more strategic monitoring program that, as we have for wind, that it also becomes more available for other energy sources. And I think also the non-price criteria in wind, with ecology as one of the major points, is also good, that this also gets enough attention in other sectors. So that's what I hope to. Yeah.
Thank you. Daniel.
Yeah, so from us, we're a technology startup, so hopefully next year we can share more development activity, more progress on our, let's say, technical milestones. I do believe we will be able to do that. We have very ambitious plans for next year. More incentives around us, I think, are also important. So things are heading in the right direction, but hopefully they will go faster. And on the longer term view, I hope that by 2035, we will be building wind farms with solar, with storage, and looking back and thinking, how the hell did we build them without it? Why were we consenting large, offshore? Kind of like how sometimes when you look back, technological advancements are seen as like, well, maybe, it could have been done in a different way, and we needed that as a stepping stone to this. So I really hope that by then we talk about renewable energy farms with all sorts of technologies to ultimately have just a cleaner and also more secure energy system, because that's, I think, also a key topic for just the whole European perspective. Yeah.
Very good vision. Yeah, thank you. Allard.
Yeah, so next year when we're here, we have the NS3 project constructed and also the HKN1, the Hollandse Kust Noord project fully constructed. This is why we moved actually this week to new fabrication facilities, 10 times bigger fabrication yard. So to make those systems. So that's really exciting because those are the first ones that go to a wind farm. And in 2030, what is it, 2035? I would say, yeah, the same. Probably all of us, offshore energy farms, everything integrated, new ones that are from day one equipped with connecting offshore solar, and the existing ones also extended with solar and with storage. And let's make better use of the seabed and the cables, I mean the sea surface and the cables, and get more continuous power to shore. Yeah.
All right, thank you. And on.
I hope to show next year a nice movie about Merganser floating on the North Sea. But also share some additional projects. And I think by 2035, I hope we, as world, make a bit of a dent in the climate curve by then. That would be the ultimate success, I think.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you very much for your participation. I think this summarizes it quite well. We've heard a lot about the incentives that are needed to reach ambitious targets. There's quite a way to go still, but getting things in the water, and this is what's happening right now, and what all of you are contributing to, is a step in the right direction. So. Again, thanks to all of you. If you're interested in learning a bit more about offshore multi-use parks, feel free to visit us at the DMEC Pavilion as well, where we also have a little scale model and a few people who are very happy to talk to you about the benefits and opportunities in offshore multi-use parks. And I wish you a very nice rest of the conference. And thank you very much.